It's another Micro Action Monday on Studio Class. Ooh, divas. Okay, we're going to talk about some stuff today. Yes. All right. So some of you may know this, but I went through a period of really intense burnout in 2017. And I picked up a lot of the strategies that I share now these days because of what I felt like was me clawing my way out of that place of burnout. And if you haven't experienced that, I really just don't ever want that for you, right? My experience with burnout was this incredible, I'm not going to get too deep into it. This probably should have been in our micro series about, self-worth and stuff, but here it is. Anyway, it started out feeling just off for a little while. And then there was this just dark cloud that was part of everything. And I had this intense kind of feeling of you're not enough. Nothing you do matters, but don't tell anybody about it because they won't trust you to work on whatever it is they're asking you to work on. And because of my, Midwestern Protestant work ethic type of stuff, I tried everything I knew at the moment, so I stopped drinking, I worked out, I ate lots of vegetables, I practiced self-care, and I just threw myself into work because, that Midwestern side of me is if you're feeling distressed, just work harder, right? But the thing is that it wasn't working. And that dark cloud was getting darker and the fog was kind of creeping into everything. It was creeping into practicing and performing and teaching, and it was making it difficult to actually, this whole podcast, I think you'll bump into, if you go back far enough, there's a specific moment where I am working on a mini series and then it just stops, right? Because that part of this podcast was getting eaten up by this burnout. And I just I'm thinking to myself, I can't possibly be burned out. My identity is built around being productive, right? I'm a person who gets things done. And the thing is that I wasn't getting stuff done. I wasn't being productive in the way that I wanted to. And I needed to find myself again. And it was scary, but I hope that some of the things that I've found and some of the things that I've shared here have been helpful to you, because I really mean that they saved my life. So when I share this, for today's microaction is about a goal setting exercise. And I know goal setting exercises, and people are like, really? Oh my gosh, Nobel Prize winning theory, setting goals, how amazing, right? I'm trying to tell you that it was. So that I had gotten stuck in the minutia of getting things done, checking things off of a list, and getting stuck in small tasks without a big vision kept me so incredibly busy, but I wasn't accomplishing a lot. And burnout was my way of figuring out that I needed to make a change. So one of the things that kind of helped me or think about this was an episode of Tim Ferriss's show where he interviewed Debbie Millman, and she describes this exercise that she calls your 10-year plan for a remarkable life. And she says that she completed this, in a very early class session with Milton Glaser, who is this incredible mentor to her and to many people. But he asked his students to write a detailed description that lists what their life would look like 10 years from now. And then he also had instructed them to read their essay every year. And so Milman in this episode remembered finding her essay many, many years later, because she was moving house, right? She's going through all of the things that she owns. She's moving house. She finds this essay, this list, And she realized how many things that she had written in this early, this early class that actually had happened in her life. So when I'm telling you that this goal setting exercise was transformative for me, this is the idea of where it's coming from. This isn't an effort to throw everything at it so that you can reclaim that big vision in your life and not get stuck in just mindless task checking off the list kind of stuff. And so the way that I do that is I have you work backwards from major milestones. Lots of my clients and I do this exercise together. And so we actually start 20 years in the future, right? I want you to envision yourself 20 years from now. This is the part when people read about this goal setting exercise and they're like, I have no idea. Like the 20 years in the future part is usually the one where people think it's the hardest, right? So I really want you to think about, 20 years from now. And I want you to write out a list of seemingly impossible goals. Think as big as you possibly can. Really just allow yourself to dream. Like something that if somebody saw this list, they'd be like, the audacity, right? Like I want you to look at that list and be like, like, how could I possibly, like, who do I think I am? That's what I want you to think. When you see your 20-year list, I want you to be like, who the hell do I think I am? Because that's what's up. And so I'm not trying to tell you that it can only be big goals, but they have to be big to you, right? They have to be seemingly impossible goals to you, right? I want those at the 20-year mark. I want you to make a list of all of those things. And then I want you to ask yourself, like, who do you want to be? Think about like career, but think about, your family, think about your health, think about your faith practice, if that's something that you have, right? Think about, where am I in the trajectory of my career, like generalist, specialist, expert, authority. And then as you've really like fleshed out that 20-year area, I want you to think about like what's 10 years before that, right? The space between your 10-year goals and your 20-year goals is the difference between your goals as an expert in the field and your goals as an authority figure in the field. And so an expert has a solid track record in handling complex, high risk, high reward projects and usually works with industry leading clients. So let this help you brainstorm goals that have to do with complex projects, that have to do with industry leading collaborators, right? And then the authority level, receiving honors, receiving awards by professional peers for contribution to thought leadership. This could help you brainstorm goals for yourself that would, something that like, ask yourself, what would fundamentally change our industry that I could be a part of, right? And I want you to think about, the 10-year goals as being leading to those 20-year goals, right? What is that halfway point? And then really, when we're thinking about halfway points, then I really want you to think about that 5 to 6 year point on the goal timeline. And when I workshop this with clients, when I workshop this with like participants, we try to pinpoint the halfway milestones to big goals. So for example, I'll have some students suggest that they want to win a Grammy, and we'll often discuss that it's more likely to be considered for a Grammy when you have a decent amount of recording experience in your history. But recording regularly doesn't just make you magically ready to take home that hardware, right? Some of the things we also discuss include, writing and playing works about things that you're deeply passionate about, increasing your technical skills to be recording ready, finding a recording engineer you trust, working with a label, becoming a voting member, getting sponsored, programming with a strong vision. And all of that takes the work, like the doing a lot of work and refining and getting better. So your 5 to 6 year point, might be having albums that are recognized, in leading national publications so that you can also be considered for a Grammy nomination, right? and and then that, like, maybe your 20-year goal, is to have 5 Grammy awards. I don't know, whatever it is. But the idea being that I I want you to think about, like, what is along the path to getting to that, right? And then 2-year goal actualization. I call it actualization. It's a very intense way of thinking about it. But honestly, you can take as many business of music courses as your heart desires, but nothing will be useful to you unless you know the trajectory you want to take. Okay? If you are working somebody else's plan instead of working your own plan, hello, burnout. If you were working somebody else's plan instead of working your plan, you're not going to magically end up at your goals, okay? So our 2-year goals are where the rubber meets the road, whatever your favorite idiom is here. And this is how your 5 to 6 year goals, like, start to look a little bit more realistic or timely to you, right? And so 2-year goals are where motivation really starts to kick back in, because for me, I've, like, scared the crap out of myself with these wildly ambitious goals. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what does it even take to get there, right? And I really want you to be thinking about, whatever that big goal is, what are the verbs, what are the actions that you would take regularly so that you can be considered, that you're going to show up in those spaces for where those honors are bestowed. Okay? You can't avoid learning about the recording industry if you want to be considered for a Grammy. Like, it doesn't magically happen. So, okay, outline your 2-year goals in alignment with your overarching, like, who do you think you are goals, right? Because this is where we're really talking about, we've broken it down even farther, right? Halfway to that 5-year, halfway to that 6-year stuff. And then finally, we're coming down to, like, our nitty gritty stuff. I was giving a workshop the other day, a virtual workshop, and we talked about this part of the exercise. And I asked these students if they had ever come into contact with the phrase KPIs, or key performance indicators, before. And that's really what I'm trying to get at with these quarterly goals in the 2-year time period, which is I want you to take out your journal, take out a piece of paper, and sketch out the quarters between now and your 2-year goals, like quarters being, July to October, what is this? July to the end of September, October to the end of December, January to the end of March, and April to the end of June, right? So you've got these quarters of the year, and in each one of those quadrants, you're giving yourself a handful of assignments that are going to help you achieve your 2-year goals that you wrote down. So if you remember our students who wanted to win Grammy Awards, then maybe their quarterly goals are, like, do an internship with a recording studio to learn about the process. I don't know, make a professional studio recording of specific, of repertoire that you feel really passionately about, right? Network with audio video recording professionals to learn more about who to have on your recording team in the future. Record every practice session to get used to listening to yourself on recordings, right? Make a plan to post new recordings after your listening sessions. Do an editing session, either, like, sit in on somebody's editing session with friends or mentors, or do your own editing session, right? So that you get really used to being super efficient in a recording studio. And then, maybe you're asking friends for advice, or working with labels, or working with producers, etc. Coming back to what I was saying about KPIs, is that key performance indicators are just what you're going to measure, right? These are your metrics. What am I going to measure in each quarter that helps me feel like I'm moving towards those goals, right? So taking a look at those verbs that we talked about, right? Record every practice session, sit in on an editing session, listen to your own recordings, schedule a professional studio recording. If you think about those, right, you can plot, schedule a professional studio recording. Like maybe you do that annually. Maybe you record every practice session, right? Every quarter, you want to have at least 15, I don't know, you pick the number, 15 practice recordings that you've listened to, so that you're desensitizing yourself to that feeling of like, oh, I hate listening to myself on recordings. Doesn't matter. Guess what? You got to do it. And so I want you to realize that none of these quarterly goals, none of these KPIs really seem that overwhelmingly difficult or challenging when you write them out. That's the point, is I want you to break them down to such an extent that your quarterly goals with metrics don't seem particularly difficult or challenging. If they still seem overwhelmingly challenging, we got to break them down even more, right? Woo-hoo! I want to take a heartfelt moment to thank Sarah and Josh for being part of the Sybaritic Camerata Listening Circle on Patreon. They're helping bring you this episode right now. If you'd like to join them, head on over to patreon.com/mezzoihnen. That's MEZZOIHNEN. Now, let's get back to the show. And I'm sure you can think back to a time where you were dragging your feet because you just didn't know where to start on something. Oh my God, I was having this feeling like the other day. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, blessings upon you. But if you are like me, and sometimes you get overwhelmed because you just don't know where to start on a big project, you had the goal in mind, but you didn't know how to strategically plan it out, then you were missing the micro actions. You got to break it down just a little bit more. Okay, I know this is a super long micro action Monday episode, but stick with me, folks. I have one more thing that I want to say about this exercise, and before I do that, I would love to do this exercise with you. So if you are looking for a coach in your life, if this really speaks to you, and you want a teammate to go over these things with, honey, get in touch with me. Like, I am here for this. That's what I do. In addition to singing, performing, recording, all that stuff, is that I help people with big questions like this, right? Because I've been there, and I want to make sure that you aren't in that like dark cloud space with your career, with your life, right? So, okay, you know my feelings on that, but the last thing that I want to say is head back to the 20-year section of this 20-year goal planning exercise and take a look at those. And you probably wrote things, that might be achievement based, right? They might be external validation based. And that's totally fine. That they're supposed to be there like that. But I do want you to take a look at each one of those and attach it to a feeling or an emotion that you'd be experiencing. Like, I want to win a Grammy Award because I want to be recognized as a distinctive and singular voice working at a high level in my industry. I want to be a New York Times bestseller because I want to be able to impact, I want to be able to emotionally connect with people, and I want to feel the impact that I'm making on thousands of people. And so does that make sense? Where I'm going with that is connect each one of those big goals to the feeling and the emotion that you want to be experiencing in your life. It'll make it that much more powerful. And yeah, divas, busyness is no longer my currency. It is a thing that I am working on every single day, which is trying to separate myself from my own validation by being super busy. That's not who I want to be known for. There are so many bigger things I want to be known for in this life than, wow, she was really busy. Like, oh no. So many things I would rather be known for. And I and I want to be known for an impact, and I want to be known for transformation. And so I can't stay in that burned out place, and I don't want you to stay there either. So let's commit to the big vision. Let's commit to each other. Let's commit to breaking down those big visions into really important tasks and not just busy work. Divas, I love you so much. If you are in that burned out place, if you are in that dark cloud place, hang on. Throw everything you can at getting out of it. I know it's hard, and I know that there are more sparkly times in front of you, right? They're not only in your past. So with that, stay sparkly inside and out, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks for joining me for Micro Action Monday. Again, I'm Megan Ihnen, and you can find me on all the socials at Mezzo Ihnen. That's IHNEN. Did you know that studio class is part of the Sybaritic Singer? It is. And if you liked this episode, you're going to love my 29 Days to Diva series. That's on SybariticSinger.com. And if you liked this episode, will you please consider leaving us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast? Thanks. It means a lot to me.